but it's my pleasure to kind of get things going tonight, to kick things off. My name is Eric Dale. I'm a partner with Robinson & Cole, a law firm in the Northeast, Boston to New York, including an office about 50 yards from here. And it was kind of fun to put this particular event together tonight, marketing at the speed of light, because I tend to spend, my firm and my practice tends to spend a lot of time in this technology and research-rich corridor of Boston to New York, and we represent lots of companies who do things that these guys are going to talk about. In fact, 3 of our panelists tonight are folks that I've had the pleasure to work with substantively in this area, and I learned that one of my partners had the pleasure to work with a fourth. So I think you guys are in for a treat, because this panel is very deep in marketing and analytics and research, and particularly in the evolution of those subjects today, over the last several years, and kind of looking forward in terms of what the future holds. So I'm going to be incredibly brief. In a second, I'm going to introduce your moderator, or our moderator, Gary Mathias from Morse. Mathias, who is probably well known to all of you, and among, I've heard, the best investment bankers in the region. I'm not sure if that's true, but I have worked with Gary on some deals, so I'd say pretty nice things about him. Briefly, our panelists, I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, because I find it incredibly boring to have you sit through me reading their bios. But as I mentioned, I've had an opportunity to work with most of these folks, and their substance and subject matter is second to none, so we really have an exceptional panel tonight. But by brief introduction, we've got Rudy Nadilo from Annik Technology Services. We've got Harvey Bronfman from 9 4-bit Slices, Dave Carlson from Relevance Partners, and Chris Hulse from InflectionPointMedia. I'm obliged to mention that after, if you don't have an opportunity to drink enough during this event, drinking will continue at Butterfield 8 at 7 o'clock. It's sponsored by 2.0.com. So that should be fun, and maybe some of these guys will be there and you can ask them the questions you really wanted to ask them. So with that, I'd like to ask Gary to come on up, and thank you all for coming, and make sure you give us feedback on tonight's program, and we will continue to try to put on great programming for you to make sure that you guys are satisfied with what the work that the Crossroads is doing.
Thank you for the plug, Eric. There's a little hedge there, though, at the end. I wasn't quite sure. We haven't worked recently enough? Okay, I'm going to do a time check here. So I'm going to pull out my beautiful cell phone, since I no longer have a watch. And we'll start. But as I kind of fumble, why don't we start with 1-minute intros? Chris, we'll start with you on the far side. Give us a little background on yourself and your company, and then we'll move it along.
My name is Chris Hulse, and I'm the founder and CEO of InflectionPointMedia. We'll be celebrating our 4th anniversary in November. I'm backed by Condé Nast for the Advanced Publication Group is my investor, and my only investor to date. I started the company before this. My background was in search marketing with a company called Business.com, which we sold in 2007. And before that, I was a managing director for Alta Vista. Prior to that, in direct mail marketing right here in Greenwich, Connecticut. Everything about the right message to the right person at the right time. With my company, InflectionPointMedia, what we do is it's something called data-driven advertising. If everyone in this room went to the same site at the same time, we're all at different inflection points in our life. And so through my company, on the verticals that we work with in the B2B space, wedding space, and a variety of others, when that page loads, the ads that you see via real-time bidding behind the scenes, everyone is able to see ads on the page which are relevant to them based on their last 30 days of browsing behavior, or sites you visit, or keywords that you search.
Harvey.
I'm Harvey Bronfman from 9 4-bit Slices. That's actually my investing company. I'm part of the New York Angels, an angel investor. And one of my other companies that's owned by that is Integrated Tactics. My job there is basically to help clients in the pharmaceutical space do their marketing. So one-to-one marketing or specific marketing around the copay card programs that are used for pharmaceutical companies to drive patients onto their meds. And so there's two components to that. One part has to do with adherence, which is messaging to patients about taking their meds, and the other part has to do with physicians and making sure the physicians are writing their meds and using the cards to put the patients on the meds.
I'm Dave Carlson. I co-founded Relevance Partners now 5 years ago. Boy, it seems like a long time. We're here in Connecticut based, and we're largely self-funded, painfully so, I might add. And what we do is we work with the initials of FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. And what that means is big grocery stores, drug chains, and discount stores to help them understand their customers and communicate with their customers. So we have a software platform, we call it Relevance Suite, and it ingests loyalty transaction data, everything in your shopping basket, and it analyzes behaviors, response to promotions, to try to get the right assortment on the shelf, and the right ads for the various stores, as well as deliver a personalized circular. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the program. I'm a research guy for 30 years, but basically have brought technology into research with information resources and other companies.
My name is Rudy Nadilo. I've been in the research business, actually worked with Dave many years I've been in research for about 30 years, and my background is in consumer panels and delivering real-time research results to, or I should say surveys out to consumers, and getting back those results in relatively real-time ways through online tools. There was a firm here years ago I founded called Greenfield Online. We were the first ones to use the internet to conduct research using the internet, I should say, excuse me. And currently I'm the senior partner at a firm called Annik Technology Services, and we're the global leader in back office operations. So research 10 years ago, if the four of us had a firm, we'd have to have 20 people working for us, because you have to design the research, execute the research, and then analyze the research. Today, the four of us could have a research firm, hire a firm like Annik, and we do all the execution of the research on a global scale. So it's been able to make things much more efficient and quicker.
Great. Thank you, guys. I'm going to start off immediately off script because we have some questions that the panelists and the working team put together. And it goes to what Chris was describing before, which was the concept of right offer, the right time, and the right place. And it's a great series of terms. What does it actually mean, and how is that different than marketing services 10 years ago?
I mean, if you go to a website and you're a man and you see a sneaker for a female, you're seeing the wrong ad. So with the evolution of what's going on right now, the ability to target a message to you strictly based on your gender, that means half of it is not wasted any longer. And so it's efficiency. Up until direct marketing did a good job with crunching data offline to do direct mail marketing at home very, very efficiently. And a lot of what's going on right now is the renaissance of direct marketing, which is done online at hyper speed. And what you're going to see with data-driven advertising, it's going to go, you can with custom printing now right down to the magazine level. If we know something about you, you can see ads in your magazine within your zip code or within your neighborhood or specifically to you, which could be custom to you. And there's companies that I know in the marketplace who are actually looking to do it at the set-top level based on the type of shows you're watching on TV, all the way down, strictly to make marketing more targetable, more effective.
And 20 years ago, that same sneaker manufacturer, if they wanted to do research about the sneaker, would either have to send out a broadcast telephone call to everybody in this room or do a mail survey to everybody in this room and hope that somebody bought sneakers, where today I can go out and cherry pick and target sneaker buyers and ask them that question. So that's faster and much, much cheaper and actually getting better data.
Harvey, can you comment for a moment on what it means in the pharmaceutical space?
Yeah, so a perfect example there is on the adherence side, and adherence is people taking their medicines. what's happening today, and you're going to see more of it with the ACA as it evolves, but what happens today is pharmaceutical companies try to engage with patients that are on their meds and have dialogue with them. And a perfect example is to get them to take their meds. And so people will sign up for a particular program and they may say, I want to be communicated via SMS, I want you to talk to me via email, send me regular mail, make a phone call from a nurse, obviously on a more expensive product. But in each case, the patient is choosing how they want to be communicated with the marketing side. And it is marketing, even though it has to do with drug adherence. And the messages are then catered to, one, the media, and then two, to what tends to work for that patient. And there's a lot of information they know about the patient, maybe not specifically their name, but them as an entity. And the messaging is developed to communicate with them one-to-one and drive the behavior, which is taking medicine.
Now, a bunch of the comments we just heard talk about who you are.
But in this case, not really who, it's, they know you, person X.
Okay, so let's extend that to behavior, because I know from working with Dave Carlson at Relevance Partners, it isn't about necessarily who you are, what meds you might be taking, what your diagnosis is. It's also about your individual behavior, perhaps at a particular point in time. So let's talk about that in the context of the retail space.
So, how many folks here have shopped at Stop and Shop? Most of you, okay. And how many of those have ever seen that little scan it gizmo just inside the front door? Okay. So that's kind of where we live. It turns out that if we can look in your grocery basket for 2 years, we really know a lot about you. We know what your family looks like. We know if you've got little kids. We know if they've grown up. We know if you're going on vacation, you're dieting, you like spicy food. You never buy this brand. You only will buy Hunt's ketchup. We know all that stuff. And so we kind of sit between Stop and Shop with all this rich information they have. And by the way, you show a loyalty card, right, when you check out, so you get all the deals, right? So you all have your loyalty card. Maybe you have it on your iPhone now. It turns out that at places like Stop and Shop that have been in the loyalty business for a long time, more than 90% of what they sell that we call ACV, all commodity volume out of those stores, are on the card. So it's pretty much a census of what everybody buys. So what our software does is it takes that information in and it puts Stop and Shop in a position to have a very relevant dialogue with you. The idea is you come in the store, you get that gizmo, or on your phone now, that you can use your phone instead of the gizmo as of a few months ago, and you can see offers that are totally relevant to your family's needs, to your brand loyalty, to your immediate needs. Worst time to give an offer on laundry detergent? Day after you just bought it. We calculate the purchase cycle and we make sure you get the offer when you need the detergent, so you're not frustrated by getting the wrong thing at the wrong time. So it's a very highly personalized interaction between retailer and shopper, and it works very, very well. I just point out, maybe some of you have heard, there's a kind of the national or the international gold standard is a company called Dunnhumby. Dunnhumby works with Kroger, and they've proven that customer centricity grows their business, and that's what we bring, is the customer centricity.
Chris?
I just want to comment. I mean, what's interesting with that type of data, it's and I actually heard someone talk about ketchup on Monday, since you brought ketchup up. The behavior that you get and be able to kind of do that. We've all seen ketchup ads online. I mean, how many of us need ketchup at the time we saw the ketchup ad? Probably no one. There are 100,000 searches done a month on Google for ketchup in the entire world. That's it. People don't search for ketchup. So what's interesting, how I look at a company like this, is if you have all this data, and we can anonymize it, append a cookie, now I can deliver display ads to the people who we know are, if it's Hunts or if it's this, we can start, doing highly targeted display advertising based on known behavioral data right around a specific purchase cycle.
Well, just to comment on it, it also doesn't have to happen in the store. The mailers that we get from these stores are also highly optimized or targeted to you or your family as an individual. And it's interesting because this has been a trend that we've seen recently. You start hearing about it. There's a huge thing in the Times about target
Yes.
and their predictive analytics. But you know, even I can remember 10 years ago being a little bit amazed that you know the Sports Illustrated that showed up in your mailbox was one of like 69 different versions that were mailed out, catered specifically to your demographic, not you as specific as in the case of these mailings. But even then, the mass publishers were producing these magazines that were slightly different in each case. You could be different than your next door neighbor. So it's been done for a while based on data they've been able to grab and capture. Today, you can capture and grab so much more.
And that's what big data is, by the way. Everybody sees it now. That's the new big term, is big data. It's been around a long time. It's got a new name. This is what we're talking about, is the transaction purchases of millions, tens of millions of customers.
And why is that? Why is the big data phenomenon now so much in front of us and grabbing attention?
Well, because I think terms in our in the technology industry have a half-life maybe of about 5 years, and data warehousing is out of favor now, and so big data has kind of replaced it. But the data, again, you probably have heard the statistics. Data is multiplying at an incredible rate, and so it is getting much bigger. Fortunately, the wherewithal to deal with it is you know, Moore's law is getting less and less expensive per petabyte or terabyte, so you can handle much bigger data. And when you mine the very big data, you can do very relevant, very detailed work with customers.
You hit the nail on the head. It's the cost of data storage, cloud computing. You know, and you pay for as big as you get, and not a cent more. And so now everyone can basically collect and analyze and crunch more data and try to get much value out of it. It's so much cheaper.
How about our ability to deal with unstructured data? Because you know, in the past, data has typically been structured, and that was kind of a limiting factor for how we can interact with data and use it. Today, we're seeing Dave, in the loyalty data space. I would imagine a lot of it is relatively structured information. If you look at, I'm dealing with a company that's in the cell phone space, and they actually do scrapes of data from your cell phone bills. The cell phone data that actually occurs within 15 minutes of a call. If you're an AT&T user, every cell call and every text message is actually identified in a line that can be scraped. And this vendor, this technology company, is scraping that data, and which is largely unstructured because it's taken off the internet, and now digested, parsed, and presented back to the customer in a meaningful way.
And there are other companies doing that because there's a real need to be able to do that as well. And one of the companies I invested in a couple of years ago does exactly that. They take unstructured data and they give it back to you in ways that you can do the analytics on it, which will become, you know, you can be an expert at a couple of things. Be an expert at working with data that's unstructured and then also doing the analytics. Those are two different problems. So some companies are solving that problem and other companies solve the analytics problem. So there are a few companies out there clearly that are doing this really well.
I'll add to that. So sticking with the Stop and Shop example for a minute, I talked about getting the purchase data, which is very structured. You have keys and data values. I paid this much for that bottle of water at this moment, this checkout lane. Now you get into social media, and what are people? Stop and Shop is concerned about their brand. Their brand is Stop and Shop. And how do people feel about them relative to Price Chopper or Kroger or whatever, whoever their competitive set might be? Social media has enormous amounts of information, knowledge about how their brand is doing with the public in general, but is very unstructured. So there is emerging software that's kind of designed to handle text and other forms of data to bring it together to answer a question.
So today is the day after iPhone 5 was launched, right? So I think it brings us to a relevant question here. The mobile and the smartphone in particular is really a centerpiece of customer communication. How is it relevant to what you're doing, Chris, Harvey, Rudy, and Dave? If you can all kind of answer that would be great.
I'll come in. When we look at mobile, what we look at is, you know, a lot of what we do is cookie-based. So based on something you search, we've classified it and cooked it. So when you go somewhere else, we can retarget you based on a known. In the mobile space, the ability to cookie a mobile device is very fractured. And so one of the things that we look at, there's a technology that we leverage until, we don't have to be leading this, but there's something called semantic technology, which basically is, we know right now you're on a website, you've got your phone and you're browsing a specific article. That article is talking about commercial loans. Now, I don't have a piece of data to associate you with commercial loans, but this technology, prior to the page being loads, can read the natural language makeup of the article, the keyword proximity and density on the page, ascertain that this article right now that you are browsing that phone is talking about commercial loans, put the Capital One commercial loan ad up there right now. So it's connecting data, but more, we call that inception point targeting because it's being done at the moment. And so basically, because it's very hard to connect, your mobile device with your iPad, with this. You can do a lot of things, interesting things at the operating system level. But again, at the end of the day, nothing tells you more about than when your self-identified intent is. That's how we're doing it right now. Eventually, we don't have a lot of money to go invest in cracking this code, and we'll wait for someone else to do it, and then we'll steal it.
So in our case, I'll keep it simple with just SMS, because they want to make sure that they reach, in the case of pharmaceutical companies, if you get someone that's willing to engage and talk about the medication, taking their meds, or maybe you're going to see a doctor, being reminded to take their meds, being reminded to take their dosing of their meds, the next visit to the doctor, etc. In that case, they want to reach everyone, not just the smartphone users. So SMS is typically the way we're communicating, and it's either one way or two way. One way is we send a message out as a reminder, and if you change your mind over time, you can just come back and say, "Don't communicate with me anymore." The other way is where it's more of a question and a reminder, and a response may drive another type of message, which is what happens there is you'll take, depending on the response, you'll resegment and retarget your messaging to that individual that you're talking to. And so segmentation and targeting or retargeting is really important, and it doesn't matter. Something as simple as SMS or something as complex as having all that data available on a website or in a mobile app, you don't need all that capability to do it because it's on the back end and it's happening. But just by the responses or engagement back and forth between one of these applications that communicates with patients can take the responses and retarget the kind of messaging that's used with them to drive the behavior, which in the case of the pharmaceutical companies is take your meds, fill that next script, talk to your doctor if you have a problem, those kind of things.
Okay, so let's stay in the grocery store with this topic of mobile. Mobile is going to be ubiquitous, obviously, and smartphones are quickly going to have the lion's share. I think that half the people that have phones now have smartphones, and that ratio is ratcheting up quickly. But it's not uniquely mobile. If you look into digital communications in the future. So I'm going to go shopping at Stop and Shop. I'm at home. I might have a tablet on the counter because a tablet's a better way to look at a recipe if I'm going to make something. So I might actually receive some communication from the store on that tablet, and that might actually inspire a trip. I have my mobile with me when I get to the store, maybe by I think emerging technology called near field communications on the new iPhone 5. I can swipe the phone in front of a machine that'll give me an offer sheet that's especially for me. Now I'm in the aisles, and there are, and you're going to see this coming. There are large interactive screens in the aisles, and I can take out my mobile phone and kind of turn it instantly into a remote control for that screen. So I stopped in the meat aisle and I picked up a package of country spare ribs that were on sale. I go over to that big screen, I scan the package, and now I've got a huge, colorful, visually appealing recipe finder that says, tell me what I can make in 30 minutes with this particular protein that is low in salt and is healthy in other ways. And I can flip, now the phone isn't useful for that, so I can touch that big screen and I can flip through 25 different recipes that I could make tonight. When each one comes up, I see the one I want. I've got the ingredients, I've got the prep. I press another button, the ingredient list is now on my phone, and I continue the trip and buy what I need. The high level of convenience with a very disparate set of communication devices. Mobile's central to all of it because I carry my life on my mobile phone. but I need other devices, other screen real estate, other formats, and other locations to really get everything I need.
Mobile is the hottest topic in research today. Everybody's talking about it. Not a lot of people are doing it. What they're finding in research is that researchers, being the geeky nerds they are having a very, very difficult time taking their 25 and 35 and 55 question surveys and boiling them down to something that's about 10 questions at most, closed-ended, which means what's your favorite color, red, blue, green, as opposed to tell me about your favorite color and what you do with it, which would be more something you type out on a computer. So that's kind of an overview, but there are two distinct things that are happening. One is sexy and one is really mundane but very powerful. First is in-the-moment research, okay? I'm walking down the street, I walk by Starbucks, and I walk into Dunkin' Donuts. And all of a sudden, my phone goes beep, and it says, why did you just walk by Starbucks and walk into Dunkin' Donuts? Because the GPS allows you to target that research to people and ask them right in the moment, why did you do what you did? And you can take that same thing to the person in the aisle. Somebody went down the beer aisle and Budweiser says, how come you didn't buy Bud today? Or whatever you want to do. That sounds really cool, and I see some people with their eyes saying that sounds cool, but it also wigs out consumers. Because they sit there and they go, wait a minute, how the heck do you know that I walk by Starbucks? And who are you to ask me this question? So there's some challenges there, and people are working that through. The other thing you can do with the phone and the Android in the moment is download an application and chronicle this same recipe that Dave talked about. Everything he and I do, one's the flip side of the other. So this same recipe, you now go home and make that, and let's say it was for a cake and it's the holidays. And this actually was a study that was done. Betty Crocker had, I don't know, 100, 200 women and daughters send in photographs of the cake that they made over the holidays last Christmas and chronicle that and talk about their experiences doing that, and they captured it all on the phone.
You see, now they can even just tap into Pinterest and see that. They can trigger those kind of campaigns in something like Pinterest and just dive into the data without even having to do a remote link. It's incredible because that's a whole new place to go in and get that information. And people are loving putting it up. You don't have to ask them to.
So there's one more, just let me finish. There's one more, the non-sexy part, is everybody talks about the smartphone. We just happen to launch the largest mobile panel in all of North America, 15 million homes. And a bulk of those are non-smart. They're feature phones, the old candy phones, the old flip phones. At the carrier level, there's software embedded in those phones that allows us to serve up questions and or ads, which you do. And people opt in to do this. And what's interesting is we know everything about that phone. So now all of a sudden, I can target phones that are turned on to Spanish. And targeting and trying to get information from the Spanish population is incredibly difficult. But now I can send out to a plain old, feature phone they're called technically, question in Spanish, ask them something. We do studies with Walmart over a weekend. We'll get 150,000 responses over a 48-hour period. That's unprecedented. I mean, you're lucky if you get a couple hundred responses in normal research. So there's a lot of clever things you can do with these devices, and as they start to expand, you can target the device, you can target whether they have a data plan, you can target the type of phone. I just turned on my phone. So within 24 hours, I can go out and say, you just bought that phone on Microsoft, how come you didn't buy a Windows 7 phone? Why did you go buy the Droid, or why did you buy whatever, the BlackBerry? So that's in my world.
Just to tie back to the Pinterest comment I made before, a lot of the pictures and
Time out.
postings.
Some people don't know what Pinterest is.
So Pinterest, is everyone familiar with Facebook? Facebook is kind of, you post something, you say something, and you can post pictures. Pinterest, you post pictures and you can say something. It's like the opposite. Pinterest is like if you imagine a bulletin board and you just pin things up on the bulletin board. So one of the things that they're finding, and it's true with Facebook as well, is a lot of that's coming from the content is coming from mobile. So, you know, even if you're in your own kitchen making those cupcakes, you take a picture with your smartphone, it gets posted up to those sites. So I just wanted to say it's not, you know, just because you're in your home or on your computer, a lot of it's coming from these mobile devices. I think most of it actually, based on recent studies.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on like Pinterest and Facebook like or something of that nature, the mobile interaction with. You know, if you said, hey, for my company, Chris, I'll give you 20,000 likes, would you pay me $1 per like? I'd say no way. It's not worth it. A like or a pin, from a data perspective point of view, to me, does not show intent. Doesn't show me anything. You can like this bottle cap. I got 30,000 likes on the bottle cap. It means nothing. What you do, if someone puts together a shopping list and says, and you get 100,000 people that put, I need ketchup on my list, that's intent. That data is much more valuable. And it's interesting, and I see from a mobile device, I mean, it's hugely valuable. You can sell that, and it's really a meaning. And I look at something like that from a mobile device where I would say, if it's not now, I don't know, 5 years, all this tying into like, when I go to the store, I'll ask my wife for the shopping list. She says it's on your phone, and it will tell me whether I got everything or not. And that data.
Is this today, by the way?
But I think the adoption, I think it'll be much larger adopted. It's interesting with your world, the $1 trillion a year spent on groceries. $1 trillion. Online advertising, like digital display, like 6 million. It's bigger. That's a lot bigger, right? A trillion. And it's interesting. It's $5 billion worth of meat sold at Costco. I mean, so it's one of those things where the ability to get that stuff on your list is going to be huge. I think a lot of the purchase intent and so forth is going to be driven by data and then driven by the ability to connect what you're getting in your refrigerator to what you're buying, what you're bringing home to influence those purchases.
And just by the way, all this stuff is paid for by the manufacturers. The retailers don't fund any of it. It's Kraft and Campbell and ConAgra that pay for the systems that sit at the retailer to give this information. That's just the way the money chain works in this business.
You know, I just thought of something with your comment that, I can see a world where, as you start to see patterns of shopping, like you and I have done over the years with panels, and that's what you're aggregating, I could start seeing with GPS devices, you get in your car, your wife gets in the car, and you start driving a certain way, and that just basically says they're going to the grocery store. So then I could see a manufacturer sending out a survey to ask about a certain product or thing they need, and by the time you get to the grocery store, and it's all obviously in real time, having that coupon delivered to your phone.
And that brings up the whole topic of predictive analytics.
That is predictive analytics.
And that is predictive analytics. So let's talk about that as a topic. Dave, I know you're using that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to stay on this same thread because I think it's tangible for everybody here. So predictive analytics or predictive modeling really is the same thing. And most people that have heard the term or think of it as predicting creditworthiness or finding fraud, using statistical inference to find patterns in data and predict an outcome. In our case, it's very tangible, related to a shopping list and how it gets assembled. Because if we know what you've bought and we know when you bought it and we know your brand loyalty, how likely you're to buy Heinz instead of Hunts, and we know that you're more likely to switch to Hunts if there's $1 off than you are if there's 50 cents off. So we know your kind of promotion sensitivity. We know your shelf price sensitivities. We know what you've recently bought. We can take all that together, and here you are with all that we know about you, and now we've got 200 offers that we could give to you. We take those offers, run it through those kind of filters and understanding, and we can actually predict for each offer, for each household, the probability that that offer will get redeemed. So now the retailer's in a position that they can ship to you on your phone, on your email, in your email, in a hologram on your windshield, wherever you can see it, they can ship to you the 20 offers that they know you're going to most likely redeem, which makes them happy, which makes the manufacturers of those products happy, and it incents the manufacturers to serve up deals that are going to get high redemption, and frankly makes the shopper happy too, because my God, you practically made up a shopping list for me. And
by the way, to the companies that are serving this stuff, those highly targeted offers and ads cost a lot.
Multiples.
Because
Multiples,
you're
yeah.
buying something that's much more targeted, there's a lot less waste.
So if you
There's also a lot of skill, too.
if you get, it's called the FF freestanding insert, that thing in the Sunday newspaper with all the coupons in it, the redemption rates are fractions of a percent. A good targeted offer to the right audience can have a 30 or 40% response rate. It's a huge difference.
Let's talk about the flip side of that. I know in retail, we all walk down the soda aisle. Some of us are avid Coke or Pepsi fans, and whether they have an offer or not, I'm going to buy Coke or Pepsi. And then there's the shopper who will only buy it when it's on discount. The same thing, Harvey, when several years ago, formulary versus a targeted copay at the cash register. So now we have a much more efficient way of saying we're going to deliver offers to people, only the people who need it, or where the behavior suggests it's going to have an impact. So let's talk about how offers are not only targeted and not only more efficient, but also the budgets allocated to offers are now much more finely attuned.
Anybody?
I mean, we target people, Inflection Point Media, we target people when people self-identify themselves as being in market based on the site they visit, the keyword they search, their change in behavior. So basically they're telling us what they want, in theory. We're not doing as much predictive analysis, obviously, which would be probably in theory more valuable, less scalable, but at least for us. But the ability to sit there and say, okay, you just went in and typed in 30-year jumbo mortgage. What do you need? You need a 30-year jumbo mortgage. What don't you need 90 days from now? A mortgage. Once you get a mortgage, what don't you need for 9 to 10 years? A mortgage. So the ability to kind of capture and get in, to get that self-identified data, and put the right message from the right person as they've come out of their shell and basically expose themselves, to do it in a way which is very cost-effective.
So there's a huge amount of efficiency in all this, because it turns out that the more I can talk to each of you individually about what you're interested in, the less money I have to spend printing millions and millions of 20-page personal circulars and shipping them to you in the mail or in the newspaper. I can save a ton of money, and I can split that savings with Kraft and Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer. There's a lot of efficiency in that. You got to negotiate and work it out, but we're kind of going toward an equilibrium where marketing should be and can be, with the knowledge that we have, incredibly efficient. I should only have to tell you something that's interesting to you. And I'll know pretty soon after I've told you whether in fact it was interesting, so the next time I can get a little bit clearer and a little bit better in what I say. And that you're going to see that year after year. The advertising as well as the offers that you see are going to be for things that are interesting to you, that captivate you, that motivate you to do something, and that efficiency will be cost savings for everybody that brings it to you.
We do have to get past the gearing part of it, though, because definitely, perfect example is the article in the Times. In the case of Target, they knew somebody was pregnant before the parents knew that the daughter was pregnant, and it was all based on predictive analytics. If you haven't read the book, it's worth reading the book. It's fantastic book.
Yeah, we learned you never put condoms in a targeted ad, because the wife doesn't know that you're. You got to be careful.
Right.
But I mean, so it has benefits for the manufacturers. It has the benefit of letting them target more and more closely to what fits. But from the user perspective, it also means that you're going to be targeted better for what fits, which means that some of the stuff that you'd see, you said the mortgage thing, it doesn't apply. Stop messaging me with that mortgage thing. It wastes my time.
How about privacy concerns? Where are we now on the privacy issue and the standards that are going to emerge? I'm walking by Starbucks. I go into Dunkin' Donuts and I get that survey question. It spooks me. Is this a generational change issue where people will become accustomed, who are in the 30s and 40s, and say that's okay, whereas in our generation it's still an issue?
Yeah, I think you bring up the big issue, and it's a perfect segue. In general, and Dave may correct me here, but I think in general, the manufacturers and the people using this data really don't care who you are or where you are by name. They care who you are as a customer with an identifier going into the store from a research standpoint, when people talk about, people have all this data about me and, you know, how did they know that I walked by Star? All these systems know is that Rudy signed up to be a member of a particular research panel. Now I have to do industry standards. I have to do what's called a double opt-in. Invite you to join. Yes, I'm going to join. Hey, did you just say you're going to join? Yeah, I said I'm going to join. So that's called a double opt-in. And some people even do triple and other stuff like that. But then once that's done, people don't care that it's me, Rudy. They care about clusters of me and people who, you know, the birds of a feather. Okay, yes, you can get, Dave is in a world that's highly targeted, right down to the individual household. From a research standpoint, we're more looking at, I want to talk to guys with, you know, what is this, black and gray striped shirt, okay? And let's just go find them all. So it's highly efficient to find them in today's world than in the world I talked about where you had to send out a telephone or whatever. You're in a world where you do have to go down to the individual. So there's even further HIPAA and all those.
Right, so in our case, you have the dual opt-in.
Right.
We sometimes have triple opt-ins because not only do you have to have it where the patients agree to be communicated with one-to-one in this program, but where the data is coming from, the patient may also have to opt in separately there to allow the data to flow. And so it's even more complicated. And again, at the same time, we still may not know who that patient is because it doesn't really matter. We just need to know where to segment them so we can communicate them with the right messages at the right time.
But it's interesting, you have, in a way, Chris is least removed the way he's targeting from the individual, but yet he has all this information to be able to target somebody. So you're kind of thinking, oh, Big Brother's watching, but, right, you don't care who it is, you don't even know who the hell
I
it
never
is.
touch personally identifiable information.
Right, right. So we have panelists who actually sign up with a name and an address because we pay them money, okay, but that's it. There's a Chinese wall and nobody ever knows who that is. And you're much closer, right?
But we never know a name.
That's
We don't,
right.
we don't want to know a name.
But you're targeting, not at that group level, but you're targeting to an individual in the same course.
Now, it's interesting, Gary, you brought up the thing about, you know, is it generational? I think clearly our kids are a lot sloppier about what they're doing with their phones, and they're not worried about privacy at all.
Oh
You know,
my God, that's true.
and I'll tell you something, you know, in most cases, these messaging things that happen to you, Foursquare is a big example. If you do Foursquare, you do a check-in, you get a message. I've even gotten some that have concerned me because, you know, you do a check-in, there's a Best Buy near my house, you check in at Best Buy, there's an Applebee's in the parking lot, and I got an Applebee's offer. Now, I was in Foursquare, so I kind of let them know where I checked in, but I got a targeted offer based on the fact that there's this restaurant nearby, so I shouldn't be freaked out because I was in something I chose to participate in. If I got that same message just on my phone, something meant some data flow that maybe I didn't agree to, and that's another issue. So, you know, in some cases, when you're engaging with one of these applications, you know, what you get back from them should be more than what you're putting in. Now, what the manufacturers do with it is clearly more than what you're putting, you know, what you're getting back. But you know, the whole idea is you're getting something out of this communication, this data that you're sharing. But it can still be a little bit eerie because, you know, that was just, I wasn't expecting it.
It's a great point. It's all about context. Right. If you're in Foursquare, you're kind of in that world of telling people where you are. But it gets back to that, you know, I went to Starbucks, walked by, went to, hey, how did you know I did that? People weird out.
Like,
Even
did
though
you know
they-
you turned that on?
Right,
Is one of the things
even though
about
they
that.
opted in to take the research, it wigs them out that you know that.
Right.
So context is everything.
Yeah, I love Applebee's. Blooming onion. No, that's the outbound. No, what's interesting is, and which is slightly different than what I do, you know, even in the mobile device, I'm at a place you're already going. So it's, again, you walk into the site or your mobile device, the ads should come up anyway. The internet's free because it's ad supported in most cases. You're reading the magazine, you're reading that site, and there happens to be an ad instead of being a Netflix ad. It's something that's targeted to you based on what we know you're in market for. So and again, done non-person identified. But again, to the point, I think what's going to happen is, you know, with my kids, 11, 9, and 7, as they get older, you know, it's amazing what people, if you go to Facebook, there's like 2.2 million people who say, I love smoking. I love smoking. I mean, I don't smoke, but they say, I love smoking. All this personal information they didn't give out for free, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I got a Marvel ad. it's all this stuff, and so I think it's just like with any type of thing, there's in the beginning, there'll be overcorrection, then we'll come back to the norm, some things will be set in, and then moving forward, you know, I was at this, great, I got an Applesby ad, but I'm going somewhere else, but hey, you know, how long is it good for me if I'll come back here in 7 days?
I got another overlay for that. Great book written by a fellow named Seth Godin. I'm sure some of you have heard of him, called Permission Marketing. It's 10 years old anyway now. But the theory is, this is all a reciprocity based, which is, and you said this just a couple minutes ago, if I get something of value, I'm willing to give something of value. And it turns out that's what people actually do in these retail stores. They say, I'm willing to let you know about me if you help me because you know. The pushback up till now, particularly in grocery and in chain drug too, is I have to show the card to get the discount. Why should I have to do that? I mean, everybody gets it. What are you doing for me in order to give this thing? But where some of them have taken it farther, and you're getting this personalization. You know, you're getting the right stuff. There's in general an overwhelming willingness to play because it's reciprocal.
Okay, last comment, and then we're going to open it up to the floor.
It's in the display world, they have these things, sometimes you might see them on a display ad, it's got a little eye on it. It's called the advanced notice icon. A lot of, you might see it, you sometimes you go blind to it, but in the upper right-hand corner of some of these ads, there's a little teeny eye. If you click on it, it says, you're receiving this ad because you've been identified via behavior that is. Would you wish to opt out? So I think it was 2 years ago, or a year ago, out of 3 billion ads served with an advanced notice icon, less than 1/10 of 1% of people actually clicked on that eye, and then of those people who clicked, something like 1/3 of 1% of people actually opted out, saying, no, I don't want to receive this anymore. So it's about as great a test panel as you can get to, like, oh, yeah. And those people would have done it no matter what. And so it's statistically insignificant.
Okay, this has been incredible in terms of the give and take here. Let's open it up to the floor. Any questions?
On the privacy topic, there are certainly significant elements in the public and in academia and unfortunately in government that aren't completely persuaded by the reciprocity of the services that are obtained in, this sort of marketing and this sort of data-driven content. As Rudy mentioned, the research industry has self-regulation. The pharmaceutical industry has HIPAA. General marketing doesn't have those sorts of codes of privacy, certainly not in the new worlds that you all are.
Digital advertising.
Yeah, certainly the DAA has been very active, and they've spoken on the issue of behavioral advertising, and they've suggested a set of guidelines, and the FTC is looking at that. I guess my point is this. The FTC and other agencies, particularly the FTC, is very interested in this, as you guys all know, and they're looking at the possibility of regulating behavioral advertising, which wouldn't be so good. Better to do it internally. Is the limit, from your perspective, should the limit be where technology extends? In other words, should we be able to do whatever we can do based on the available technology, or is there a place that you should stop voluntarily where maybe you shouldn't go, not from some grand ethical scheme, but just in terms of pragmatism, that we're going too far and somebody's going to come in and shut us down because people think it's creepy?
I'll be like a political candidate. I'll answer a different question. No, but it's a watch a lot of the Digital Advertising Alliance, which is the interactive IAB, the Better Business Bureau, and then Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, Apple, everyone else under the sun put together self-regulation. And the thing is, no matter how good you write self-regulation, so to say, how many lawyers in the room, raise your hand, it'll never be good enough. And so eventually, it's one of those things where it's going to take some time. But I think overall, as an industry, we do a pretty darn good job. I mean, it's one of those things where, and it's just like everything. It's always going to be, it can be done, 1 trillion times right, one time wrong, and it comes up. But I think overall, a lot of what's happened recently is basically, through this, people is being self-aware and realizing kind of where to go. And eventually, I would say, it's, as overall as an industry, we're doing very, very well. I would say, as time goes on, I'm all for a consortium of everyone coming together kind of in the industry, kind of figuring out, and FTC might have something to say about it. They probably want to tax us somehow to get some additional revenue. But it's but I think overall, as an industry, for what we live in, the way we do it, I think it's done pretty well. It used to be in the news a lot. It's really not coming up a lot at all.
Next question.
I've got a philosophical question for you gentlemen. My name is Brian Noonan. And this came up in a TED conference video that I was watching, that if I go on Google, and maybe as businessmen you don't care about this, but maybe as human beings, if I go on Google and everything, as you were saying, is based on what I've already searched for, how do I find something new? How do I find something I might not have known I wanted? Serendipity and things like that. And when people suddenly say, what's happening? I didn't even know the store opened because I've never been in it.
You should share what that TED video was, because that actually is a really good video. I don't remember what it was, but at South by Southwest it was discussed. It is a really great point, because the browsers, unless you go into personal mode, where you're saying disregard anything, don't save anything. Google, if you're logged in or not on the same machine or not, it knows all the things you're searching, and the universe of things that may or may not be relevant keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller based on this history. So if you know what that TED Talk was, definitely share, because it's worth watching, and it is a relevant point. It's these browsers, especially if you log into them, then it's just not on that one computer, it follows you. It's wherever you're using it. If you're logged in, you're getting search that's relevant to what your behaviors or what you've looked for in the past was online.
What I want to come.
Go to start page or somewhere that doesn't search.
I want to come out of it. I'm not sure that's 100% true. I was 7 years in the search world, and it's one of those things where Google by design is basically, its job is to get the most, organize the world's information, and it gets you the most relevant result as it is. That the fact that you type these other things, I assume that eventually it could maybe use that to more customize your search results, but my understanding of it is basically it's like I'm seeing you for the first time every time I'm noticing. And when it comes up, depending on, you can apply some historical to it, but their job isn't to basically go out and say, I think if you look at the general world, it'll all be porn ads or something.
I have almost 1 million pages of content up, about 1,100 different topic directories, and we've seen a complete change in Google advertising that shows up on our directories. We'll have a directory on diabetes, we'll see drug rehab, we'll see alcohol, we'll see TVs, whatever. That behavior tracking is starting to change. The ads that are showing up, and they're not related to the content.
So they're becoming less relevant.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's to the point now, if you're shopping for a big screen TV, you're going to get ketchup ads if you're due for a ketchup purchase. We're a small group. If everyone can say who they are and who they're with, it would be great because it enriches the whole experience. Line in the back.
Much of what I've heard applies to the consumer. My problem is I do angel investing, and much of it is in the business world. And you get business plans that show that you're going to triple the size of your business in 2 or 3 years. Where do I find ways of documenting how competitive the product is, how much people really want it, how I judge repeat sales, how do my prices work? This is the area where I need information, and the entrepreneur doesn't bring it. He's come up with some numbers that God gave him, and I need to deal with them. So is there anything comparable to what you're doing in the business?
It sounds like he needs research people to find out things for him.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, just take Len's question further and say, can people go direct without going through an intermediary? Your business is being an intermediary for these questions. Your technology.
Well, of course they go direct. Just do-it-yourself services. I mean, what's an example of what you might want?
I'm looking at a company now that has technology that can measure changes in your face, bumps, and so forth. It's something new. There's some technology out there that doesn't do a good job. One of the first
Is this a consumer product or a business application?
They would sell to industrial companies measuring change in the surface of steel, aluminum, and so on.
Okay.
One question I have is, this seems to be a little bit better. Who cares? The second question I have is, this is new, how long will, not like Pepsi, I put it on the shelf, and it's just got moving. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to begin to sell this and what the follow-on sales are gonna be. I don't know a lot about pricing. I come up with a number, I don't know whether it's a good price, not a good price. So I have many of the same questions I have in the consumer area. It's just, I don't know how I get this research.
I think, Len, the problem is that we need anyone here who has excess analyst capacity that they could lend to Len and do that type of work. I mean, at the end of the day, Len, you're talking about a market research and research question here, which I think from a marketing services standpoint is on the other side, gathering information. So let's move on to other questions. Jason?
Jason Liu, I'm a founder and of Data Network Servicing. It's an intellectual capital company. Doing research on the network and its application. It's fascinating. You share your success story with us. But I would like to ask you a comment on who owns those data and what's the procedure for releasing them? What's the deal you make with them? So then it's become a feasible, profitable business.
Well, in the case of retail in general, and we can go well beyond grocery stores if you're talking about restaurants or hospitality or car rental, whatever, it's a foregone understanding that the owner of the data is the company who got the transactions. So, you know, we have no right to use that data unless that company allows us to, and sometimes that's very, very difficult. They consider it very, very sensitive information. Very often, a lot of money is paid. I'll tell you this. Kellogg pays just Kroger, right? Their biggest grocer, but only one. Kellogg pays over $1 million a year just to get some reports that come from that data. It's very, very valuable, and retailers are paranoid about it getting into the wrong hands, but they are the owners.
And in research, the companies, they're called panel companies, the one who aggregate the consumers, they own that consumer information, but the studies that are done on those consumers are owned by the person who commissioned the study.
You know, it's interesting, even on the medical side, some of the big chain pharmacies protect not the prescriptions that are written, because there's tons of analytics being done about prescriptions, not who, but about them. But they protect some of the data as to who the prescribers are, because they want to sell that data and manage it. They don't want the companies that are processing claims, using claims, they don't want them to use that data or sell it and have it. So it's interesting because in some cases that's clearly defined, and in other cases, you know, it may be from a statistical standpoint you can use the data, but they own the data. It's different, even within the same space, it's different. And in medical, because of HIPAA, obviously there are a lot of other restrictions, but there are some of the chains that want to protect what you can do with that data, even when they're submitting it to you for another purpose. They overly want to over restrict what they're providing.
My name is Bill Lederer, and I'd like to ask Mr. Hulse an extension of that question. So you work in digital media. Who owns the data? Is it the agency, the publisher, or the advertiser?
The publisher, right? They give it to anyone. It's definitely not the agency. Hey, they lease the data or rent it, with option to buy if someone clicks on that. You know, when we work with the data we utilize to pay, like for instance, one of the technology, we have simple site retargeting. So we'll go to Crystal Geyser, people go to Crystal Geyser water. We can give this particular product brand, so can we put a pixel on your site so when people go to your site, we can drop a cookie on them. Then when they leave, we can target them with your display ad. It's their data. We're allowed to use it in some shape, form, or fashion. There's probably some rev share associated.
So I have a follow-on question. I've had the opportunity in 4.5 years to work in a business that competes with each of you. I'm just leaving WPP as one of the most senior digital media CEOs. And each of you have some parallel business inside the WPP umbrella, as you each know. And I wanted to ask about something that hasn't been mentioned, and that's the weak link in all of this. So we have incredible data and technology capabilities now, really wonderful people working in the industry. There's capital available, maybe not enough capital. But the weak link, it strikes me, is the customer. And as your ask whether, I'm leaving WPP feeling like the weak link has always been our customers. And now that I guess I'm not there anymore, I can say that. I wanted to ask if you have that same sense that you're building wonderful capabilities in terms of delivering great efficiencies and effectiveness, but that oftentimes we're so far ahead of the customer, our B2B customers' ability to handle it, that it's very difficult to be able to really bring this to bear and through it.
Well, certainly in pharma, that's a real issue because in some cases, the brands may be totally into the idea that they may want it and understand exactly what to do for them, but then there's compliance that won't allow it. And so many times, some of the companies, from a central government standpoint, probably not the right word, but from somebody says no, even though the brands and other people say yes. And it's not always to all of the idea, but it may be to some parts of the idea that they think runs a little too close to the edge. And that's with HIPAA and opt-in and double opt-in and even triple opt-in. It still happens, and you'll see it in the way they are willing to do the campaigns around both to the doctor and communicating and engaging with the patient.
I guess, timing's everything, right, in comedy and business, and my partners and I first started working on all this stuff I've been talking about over 12 years ago. And when we founded the first company here in Connecticut, we were so sure the window for all this stuff I've talked about would be closing in a couple of years. And it turns out 12 years later, it's now really starting to open enough that we can climb through it. It had to happen that Kroger and Tesco, because they're kind of sister users of this dunnhumby, proved that it worked. And retailers are, apologies, followers. Nobody wants to be first, but when a big one is first and says we've got 35 consecutive quarters of growth because we are customer centric, now everybody's lining up in the door and say, I'm not sure what it is, but I want one. And that's kind of happening right now.
Last question? Any more questions?
I have an outdoor question, which is, it sounds like a lot of things that you're describing are affecting decisions, purchase decisions or actions in relation to an impulse that somebody already possesses. But to what extent do these analytics empower companies or organizations to actually modify behavior? I'm thinking in particular in the healthcare business where less about adherence and more about getting people to start making better choices, healthier choices. And I may not have that impulse right now, so you can't sort of convince me to do it. But is it possible that this information, because people like me so well, would actually make it possible for me to lose weight?
It's interesting. Some of the companies have been, it's a great question. Some of the companies have been, because of let's say, governance issues, they've been very careful as to how much they're collecting. They're leaving it to partners to set up programs when it's a more rich set of data around let's call it healthy behavior, not specifically even if the product is for that. They've kind of let others do that, and maybe they'll give them money to work on those projects. Because it's almost kind of too much information for what they're doing. But it's been tough from the programs that I've seen that have been run. It's difficult because in most cases it's still marketing driven. This is again outside the drug programs, and so I'm not sure yet they're paying enough attention to that. They should be, but I don't think they are.
Okay, go ahead.
I got one more quick one. So Safeway, a couple of my partners wrote a system for Safeway called Food Flex. It looks at all your purchases and decomposes it into all the ingredients that make up everything you buy and everything you would consume. And so how much sodium and niacin and all of the ingredients and all the food types, and lets you track at home on the web after you input a family profile how you're doing relative to where you should be. And for every product you buy, that system will offer a healthier alternative. So it's out there, but boy, to get people to actually change their behavior in terms of what they like very, very difficult.
I mean, just to comment on that, I mean, I was gonna say there's a great business model, go get some investing and start that. You know, here's everything you need, here's the, and he says it exists already. It's kind of like, but it's the same note, it's a personal choice. You know, Bloomberg today, in the city it passed no more 16.5 ounce sodas in Manhattan. You know, if you want to drink a 20 ounce soda, you can't.
Once you put milk in it.
What?
You put milk in it. you
Milk,
can.
is that what it is? Well, I don't know what it is, but it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, you can't, obviously can't control yourself not to drink a 18 ounce Dr. Pepper. Yeah, but it's interesting.
This is great. I want to thank the panelists.
Yeah, great.
Crossroads Venture Group has been watching your guys' behavior for the last week, I believe. We've been monitoring your smartphones. And I think we recognize that each of you needs a personal gift of good night and chocolate. Because we discovered that it's a common light among all of you. So we're very appreciative of you guys taking the time and joining us here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, I want to thank you all on behalf of the Crossroads Venture Group. We're a little frightened by what you said, obviously, from the questions, but also the one thing you didn't talk about is, and I ask this as an investor, how do you invest in this space? It's changing so fast, and it really feels fragmented. I see business plans all the time with different little pieces of this business, and so can I just ask again, how do you see the investing sort of framework here? Now you guys don't think about that a lot, do you?
Well, I'll tell you, so since I'm an angel investor, I've made a couple investments in some of the space that we talked about. From a mobile analytics standpoint, I looked and said, you know, what they're working on is very relevant. Understanding as much as we can about the user, the apps that are being used or not being used, whether they're being used, 50% of the apps downloaded don't even get clicked on. I mean, those kind of things were really relevant. So one of the companies I invested in was doing that. And that was not just for Apple, all over, which was really important to me. Another one had to do with unstructured data. And that is a critical piece because companies now have all this data and even structured data. They don't know what to do with it. And so those companies, I think there's a great opportunity there because if they have a solution, people need those solutions. Now the marketing and all the other things, that's something they have to do, but I look for the companies that are trying to solve these problems that I see, and a lot of them have to do with data, either collection or managing.
Okay.
They're real problems.
I was going to say, I look at it a little different. I think you want to look at the underlying core technology that drives it. So, I mean, I hear what Dave talks about, and if somebody comes along with a next generation scanner that is a better scanner, every store on the planet has a scanner. That's what's driving everything he does. So if somebody walked into me with a better scanner that was faster, more accurate, cheaper.
Oh, that's going to be the next scanner, won't it?
Not in the grocery store. It's still going to be at the checkout. I'm talking about the core technology driving. That's one thing. And then there's tons of tools that, drive all this stuff. So,
And look at the tools.
And then common sense, this makes sense to my wife, my kids,
Right.
Your husband, whatever. It's like
Okay.
anything else.
Well, thank you. I hope you'll be a resource to anyone else in the audience who's just curious as I am about how to figure this all out. I just want to let you know that we at Crossroads Venture Group have a lot of upcoming events both this year and next year. We have our calendar set for 2013. We have an event coming up in October, 1 and 2 in November. You're all on our mailing list, so you'll get them. We also want to thank our sponsors. As usual in Stanford, we're here at the UConn campus, thanks to UConn sponsorship. And also all the other people on this list are our sponsors, and we're very grateful to their continued financial support to bring these programs to you. You can see it's a comprehensive list of people who are engaged in the venture capital community in Connecticut at many, many levels. Our next event is October 11th in Hartford. Our programs rotate from Hartford to New Haven to Stanford. After that, we have an Innovation Summit in New Haven. And then finally on November 8th, we'll be talking about medical devices. Let's see, medical devices in New Haven again, I think, yes. What? Oh, yeah, Len's on the phone. So we want to encourage you all to, I think most of you are members of CVG. If you're not, please join. We have events every month, the second Thursday, and then investors are invited to a luncheon every month on the third Wednesday. So we have a very active program. Next year we'll be adding some educational programs brought by our sponsors as well. So if you have any questions about that, I'm here, Mike's here, Ann and Nell are here as well who can answer questions for you. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoy cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, and come to the Butterfield 8 at 7 o'clock, which is just around the corner. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks again.